What if I told you that a single Airbnb booking, let's say a weekend in Rome, can legally involve 3 different countries? You pay from New York, the apartments in Italy, but the revenue, it flows through Ireland. And here's the kicker: none of those countries get the full tax bill. This isn't tax evasion. It's legal, it's optimized, it's global, and it's changing how governments think about digital taxation. So, Airbnb is the blueprint, and today we are going to break it down. Oh, and a quick intro if you haven't met before. My name is Michał. I'm a lawyer and economist by training, a business consultant and an analyst by profession, and a business owner like probably many of you. I run a company called Prezo. You can check us out at the link provided in the description below. We specialize in transfer pricing, business analysis, and helping small and medium-sized companies to scale by using tested and legal frameworks. We are working with over 100 companies yearly: tech startups, manufacturers, e-commerce sellers, and I get it. You all want clarity. You want real answers and recommendations, and most importantly, you want your business to grow without giving half your profit away in taxes. That's what this channel is about, and that's what Prezo is about. So if you're a growing company trying to scale across borders, structure smarter, or not just get crushed by paperwork, this is the place for you. Let's keep going. In this episode, we are breaking down how Airbnb, the travel giant with no hotels, handles its global revenue, uses transfer pricing across entities, and navigates a wave of global audits and regulatory changes. If you are building or advising an international business based on tech, data, or IP, this is the framework you can't afford to ignore. Let's start with what Airbnb actually is, and more importantly, what it's not. Airbnb isn't a hotel chain. It doesn't own real estate, operate facilities, or pay for cleaning stuff. It's like value isn't in bricks and mortar, it's in the code, in the algorithms, and the trust the platform creates. It's a two-sided digital marketplace. One side, over 4 million hosts, listing homes, apartments, even tree houses and castles. The other, 150 million users who've made over 1.5 billion bookings worldwide. In 2023 alone, Airbnb generated nearly $9 billion in revenue with a net income worth of $4.5 billion. That's more than most of the hotel chains. Airbnb monetizes connection, not accommodation. It charges hosts a 3% fee. Guests pay up to 14.2% on top of the booking price. It also earns from Airbnb experiences, premium listings, and insurance products. The entire ecosystem is digital, scalable, borderless, and asset-light. But here's the twist. Despite operating in over 220 countries and regions, most of Airbnb platform's revenue is not taxed locally. Instead, it's rooted through a tightly controlled network of group entities, usually headquartered in low-tax jurisdictions like Ireland. Let me give you a comparison. Traditional hotel chains like Marriott or Hilton pay local tax on local profits. Their buildings are in-country. Their staff are local. Their income is really hard to shift. But for Airbnb, it's core value driver. The platform itself is like hosted on servers, managed by global teams, and legally held by a single IP-owning entity. That means the bulk of Airbnb's profit is taxed where the platform IP sits, not necessarily where the stay occurs. And this is where transfer pricing begins to play a pivotal role. Because the question becomes, if the value is digital and global, how do you allocate income fairly between countries, between group entities, between where the tech is built and where the bookings are made? That's what we'll explore in the next segment. But before we move on, think about this. What would happen if every digital platform structured like Airbnb? How much tax would shift away from where services are delivered to where code is owned? Now, let's zoom into one booking and unpack how Airbnb routes its revenue. Imagine you are the CFO of a hotel chain based in Spain. You hear that a traveler from the US just booked 5 nights in a Barcelona apartment. Fair enough. The payment processed through Airbnb. But as you dig deeper, you realize the money didn't flow directly from guest to host. It passed through Ireland. So let me show you the breakdown. The guest pay $1,000 through Airbnb's US platform. Airbnb Ireland collects the payment. $850 goes to the host in Spain. The remaining $1,500, the platform's cut, is booked as revenue by Airbnb Ireland. Why Ireland? Because Ireland is where Airbnb locates its platform operations for non-US markets. The entity here, Airbnb Ireland UC, is the one booking the revenue. Meanwhile, the US entity might only receive a royalty or service fee, even if most of the tech was built in San Francisco. And Spain, despite being where the experience happens, it sees little of that 150 platform fee, perhaps a bit of VAT and the host's income tax. Micro hook. One booking, 3 countries, one tax optimized structure. This example might sound simple, but when you multiply it across millions of transactions in over 220 countries, it becomes a global tax engine. And it's perfectly legal, provided the transfer pricing between those entities is defensible. But what's exactly the point? How do you defend it? And what do the tax authorities look for in this structure? So let's unpack the next one with the DEMPE framework. Now we come to the heart of how Airbnb defends its tax model, transfer pricing. If you're a tax auditor or even just a curious CFO, one of the first questions you will ask is, who is really creating the value? This is where the OECD's DEMPE frameworks comes in, one of the most important tools in modern transfer pricing. DEMPE stands for development, enhancement, maintenance, protection, and exploitation. Let's walk through each using Airbnb as our case study in this case, okay? Airbnb's platform is coded, tested, enhanced, and monitored primarily from the engineering hub in San Francisco. So that would be the D, E, and M, development, enhancement, and maintenance. Protection of IP, things like trademarks, patents, and legal defense, are often centralized through legal teams and holding structures in the US or Europe, depends on the location. So exploitation, however, is where the things are getting interesting. Airbnb Ireland licenses for the platform, the IP, and exploits it across all non-US markets, collecting booking revenue and reporting profits from every reservation in Paris, Rome, or Rio. So, who should get the profit? The country building the code or the one collecting the cash? To make this work, Airbnb relies on a combination of a few elements. Cost-sharing arrangements, CSAs, to co-fund the development. IP buy-ins for newly developed intangibles, and the royalties that reflects ongoing access to platform assets. All of this must be backed by transfer pricing documentation with functional analysis, financial benchmarks, and intercompany agreements. But tax authorities know how to read between the lines. If Ireland books the revenue, but all the coders, product managers, and data teams sit in California, that's obviously a red flag. The rule is simple. Profit should somehow follow people, not just the paperwork. If they don't, you can bet there is going to be a challenge. Let's look at what happens when countries push back and Airbnb ends up in the crosshairs. Let's shift from theory to reality. And look at what happens when governments decide Airbnb structure isn't good enough. Because that's exactly what happened in France, the UK, and across the EU. In France, there was a 100 million tax hike. 2020, French tax authorities hit Airbnb with a claim for more than 100 million euro in unpaid corporate taxes. The issue? Bookings made by French users were being funneled through Ireland, even though the host, the guests, and the value were all local. So France argued Airbnb had a permanent establishment, meaning it was effectively running a business inside the country and should be taxed accordingly. Airbnb pushed back, but the message from France was clear: digital presence is also economic presence. Next one, United Kingdom. It was a political pressure and a political heat. In the UK, it wasn't just regulators, it was Parliament. Airbnb had reported hundreds of millions of pounds in bookings, but paid less than a 100 million pound in corporate income tax in certain years. That created headlines. Headlines created hearings, and hearings created policy shifts. So eventually, Airbnb committed to reporting more revenue locally and paying more tax in jurisdictions where bookings happen. Finally, EU and OECD. It was like systemic response. Across Europe, policymakers realized this wasn't just about Airbnb, it was about the platform economy as a whole. The EU responded with national digital services taxes in France, Spain, and Italy. The OECD responded with Pillar 1, a framework to reallocate taxing rights to user jurisdiction, and Pillar 2, mentioned already several times in the previous videos, to ensure a 15% global minimum tax. When their model came under fire, it sparked a global tax revolution. These were no longer isolated audits. They were like signals that the rules were changing. So how does Airbnb adapt to it? That's what we'll explore next. So how does Airbnb defend its structure? Because when regulators and politicians start asking questions, you need more than just contracts. You need consistency. So they focus on centralizing IP ownership. Airbnb, like their core asset, the platform, is held by a centralized entity for non-US markets. That entity is usually based in Ireland. That includes booking interface and back-end architecture, search and pricing algorithms, user reputation, and trust systems. Ireland licenses this technology out to the rest of the group and collects platform fees. The logic is, if Ireland owns the IP, it should also collect the profits. Second point, limited risk distributors, LRDs. In high volume markets, Airbnb sets up like local entities that operate under limited risk. That means they do some local marketing, they offer customer support, but they don't bear the business risk. They are paid a modest arm's length margin, often around 3 to 6% of their cost base. This keeps profits low and predictable in high tax jurisdictions. The third, documentation and alignment. This is where most tax models fall apart, and Airbnb tries not to. The company maintains entire structure of intercompany agreements, transfer pricing reports, benchmarking studies, updated obviously, and country by country reports. But it also knows, sometimes documents are not enough. If your structure says Ireland owns the IP, Ireland better have people who know what that IP is and how it works. Substance is the new standard. And if you don't have the engineers, product managers, or decision makers in the right place, the model breaks down. So Airbnb leans on operational alignment, it localizes teams, it hires in Ireland, it tries to make sure that the paperwork and the people line up. So next, so we will look now at the future of this model, because even the best structure can't outrun a global rule change. Now, let's talk about the future. Because even if Airbnb structure is legal and defensible today, the ground underneath is shifting. It's shifting fast. Governments and institutions aren't just challenging structures retroactively, they are rewriting the rules entirely. Pillar 1 means follow the users. Under the OECD's Pillar 1, large multinationals, especially digital platforms, would have to allocate part of their profits to the countries where their users are located. So please think about it this way. A booking made in Italy by a user from Canada using a platform headquartered in Ireland. Under Pillar 1, Italy and Canada could each get a slice of the tax base, even if Airbnb has no physical office in either. This means that market presence trumps legal entity. Pillar 2, the 15% global minimum tax, and it doesn't stop here. Pillar 2 says even if you shift profits to a low tax country like Ireland or Bermuda, other countries can apply a top-up tax to bring your effective rate to 15%. In other words, it's no longer about where can I go to pay the least, it's about can I defend this when everyone's watching. These new rules aim to neutralize tax competition and force multinationals to report profits where value is created, not just where the tax rate is lowest. So, this is the new world. Low tax IP hubs are no longer safe zones. Transfer pricing needs operational proof. Nowhere income is becoming everywhere taxable. If your model relies on shifting value through contracts but not people, the next decade will be a compliance nightmare. So, what's the takeaway? We'll wrap it up next with lessons, a reality check, and what you should do before the next audit arrives. So let's bring it home. Airbnb didn't just change how we travel, it changed how we think about value, ownership, and tax in a digital economy. It showed that you can create 100 billion company without owning real estate, without having staff on site, without paying taxes where your customers are. And that woke up the world somehow. Today, governments are catching up. Pillar 1, Pillar 2, country by country reporting, public pressure, investigative journalism. No one's flying under the radar anymore. So here's the takeaway. Whether you're a CFO, a tax director, or an entrepreneur, simply ask yourself, where is your value really created? Who owns your IP and who should? Are your company agreements backed by actual operations? Would your structure survive a headline audit? If the answer to any of those is I'm not sure, you've got to work to do. Because this isn't just about compliance, it's about credibility, sustainability, and risk management at really the highest level. Don't wait for the tax authorities to define your story. Own it before they write it for you. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive. If you found this video somehow valuable, like this video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, which company or structure should we break down next. This has been Michael from Prezo, helping you navigate global tax with clarity, confidence, and hopefully control. See you in the next one.